Okay, welcome everyone. We wanted to have this meeting earlier this week because I want to share with you some ideas about building this part of your creed document before you build it. So the 13 of you will have a head start. Hopefully everybody else, 15 now, will be able to watch the recording quickly and be able to do this part. So to start off with, I wanted to just ask this question, and that is, we've already done our beliefs. Now we're doing the values. Could someone give me a good idea? What's the difference between a belief and a value? Or can they be the same? Belief versus values. Oops, I kind of went ahead of the game. Any ideas? What's the difference between a belief and a value? Anybody? Someone started to vacuum right next to me, hopefully. So Dylan says a value is the action behind a belief. Okay, it's a pretty good segue right there, Dylan. Values are an extension of your beliefs or your beliefs in action. An example from the reading this week is you might believe in democracy, but do you value your democracy enough to actually go vote? So the question is your belief in action would be something that you value. So let's extend that a little bit further. And that is, let me read what Samuel said first. Belief is more of a framework or a paradigm. Value is something you give priority to. And I think that's excellent, Samuel, so thank you for that. So the question here then would be, when your actions are congruent with your values, then you have peace. This is the art, that is the art of progressive living. The art of progressive living is living in alignment with your values or doing those things that matter most. But sometimes we don't always act in a consistent manner with our values. Sometimes our actions are incongruent with our values. When that's the case, then we might have frustration. So the question is, why is it that sometimes we act inconsistently with our values? Why do we sometimes, even though we value something, for example, I value being a parent, I value my spouse, I value my faith, but sometimes I'm not exactly a great dad or a great husband or always doing things that that are in alignment with my faith. So why is it? Why do we sometimes? Okay, so Emily says peer pressure. Okay, that's a great one. Dylan says temptation. Okay, I would agree with that one as well. We are all natural men and women. Thank you, Whitney, for that one. Yeah, so sometimes we just slip up. And sometimes when we have this is what we call a value directions worksheet. So for an example, I value being a dad. If I was to rank that on a scale of 1 to 0 to 2, small scale, it is very important to me. But sometimes I'm either not satisfied or moderately satisfied because of my actions or maybe inactions, right? So if there's a discrepancy, sometimes we might be frustrated. Well, I wanted to share with you a little concept that before I show you some examples of your creed document. So this little diagram shows that we have life, like we're living life today. And sometimes we might have some triggers. The triggers might be a thought or an idea, might be a temptation. But if we let the triggers go far enough, we might slip up. We might make a mistake. And if we do make a mistake, then life opens up after the mistake. But now we just have life with guilt. So the question is, when we're living life and we're paying attention to the things that matter most, maybe with the law of 1%, What happens when we sense that we have these triggers? What can we do to make sure that we don't have the exclamation point happen? And one of the ideas here is that you might want to pay attention to something we called BLAST. And just to make this go quickly, BLAST stands for bored, lonely, angry, stressed, or tired. When I'm all of these, and sometimes I'm all of the 5, sometimes I might just be bored or lonely or just tired, I find that I'm more susceptible to slipping. So the question is, if we notice that we're blasted, bored, lonely, angry, stressed, or tired, what can we do to make sure we don't slip? Any ideas? Any ideas to managing blast? Oops. Okay, Emily says, use the law of 1%. That's a great idea. Thank you. Take a deep breath. Thank you, Parker, and thank you, values. That's kind of the STAR approach. Brittany says, stay busy, like exercising, doing something that you love, okay? That's acceptance commitment therapy. So really good ideas here. Samuel says, practice self-restraint. Dylan recognizes you're either bored, lonely. And if you're recognizing it, okay, that's a perfect segue again. Thank you for what I want to share next. Dylan says, recognize you have some of these, a couple, maybe all of them. And if you do, the idea would be you have kind of a go-to to-do list. This could be read your scriptures, do some push-ups, call a loved one, do a hobby, do something that you love, go exercise, do 10 push-ups, right? But do something to break that trigger. And then the other thing that I want you to think about is something we call the resource allocation process. Now, over the next week, this week, you're going to be practicing. We've kind of been doing it the last couple of weeks. Practice. You're going to do some exercises that are going to help you identify your values. One other way to look at what you value, this is from Clayton Christensen, is to look at what we call your resource allocation process. And the resource allocation process is simply this. I'll summarize this. Look at where you spend your time, energy, and your money. Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your energy? And when do you spend your resources? That's a good indicator of what you love to do, what you're passionate about, what you value. So let's talk about this week's Creed document, okay? This is where I need your help. And by going through this exercise, you're going to build a great part 4 of your Creed document. So you're going to write a value statement, and then you're going to write affirmations. Affirmations should be present, positive, and concrete. Here's an example. One of my values is I value other people. Okay. Here is an example of an affirmation. I am not mean. Okay, tell me what you think of I am not mean. Is that okay? Could you do it differently? Okay, Whitney says a little open-ended. Okay, I'd agree with that. It uses a negative word, not and mean. 2 of them, actually. Okay, so let's try a different one. Let's try round 2. I try to be kind. Okay, tell me about I try to be kind. How is I try to be kind as an affirmation? Okay, it means there's effort. Good. Am is better than try. It's not affirmative. So Dylan, thank you. Emily, you got that right. Megan says it isn't a for sure thing, but it should be what you are. All right. I will be kind. How about that? I will be kind. Good, bad, problematic, not present. Whitney nailed it. Thank you. So a better way to do it would be simply, I am kind. Remember, what follows I am follows me. And that is a super simple affirmation to use with your positive self-talk and positive vision. So as you're building your creed document and as you're building these affirmations, remember, I am kind, I am strong, I am loving, I am patient, I am athletic, I love others. Don't have to say am, okay? I love others, okay? So, I am kind. So here's, and actually I thought about updating this today because these are actually a couple of not great examples, okay? That I need to update this. So here's a one where you have someone indicating their values of faith, relationships, agency, and happiness, okay? Good values. What's wrong with these affirmations? Any ideas? Based on what I just shared with you, what would you say is wrong with these affirmations? Any ideas? Are you stumped? I think they're too long, okay? I think they should be shorter. So if you look at faith, that top one, my faith in my Savior Jesus Christ gives me great strength, okay? This could be, I have faith in my Savior, and or my Savior gives me strength, okay? You could turn that into a couple of affirmations that are a little bit shorter, okay? All right, let's proceed to example 2, okay? Here's someone who has some values, friendships, and physical health, and ability to provide, marriage, and membership in the church, okay? If you look at these, let's look at membership in the church. I think he starts off great in almost all of these, okay? But I think they're, again, too long. I am blessed to be born in the covenant. That might be long enough. I am a worthy priesthood holder. That would be long enough, okay? Let's forge ahead with a couple more. This was actually from another teacher in the class. She gives some examples, okay? If you look at her family one as an example, I will be a better wife. I think she should change that to I am a great wife. Family, I place motherhood as my top priority. I think that one's good, okay? Motherhood is my top priority. I follow, this is tells you how old this was, President Hinckley's advice, I follow the prophet, okay? All right, so those are just a couple of examples. Okay, so this week on your personal creed document, you're building your values. There is not a set number of values. I wouldn't do 20, I wouldn't do 3. I think 7 to 10 values would be a good starting point. 6 to 10, 7 to 10 values. Each value should just be a statement of what you value, and then a 2, 3 maybe affirmation statements. A couple of mine have 5, but I think 2 to 5 affirmation statements that are kind of the I am kind, I am loving, present tense, positive, and concrete. Okay, are there any questions? This has ended up to be a little shorter meeting, but that's okay. I will stay on just for a second to see if any of you have questions. If not, we'll get back together next week. Hopefully my voice is a little better by then, and we'll do goals. All right, thank you all.